The notion that the mainstream media uses climate change to repress Christians is a complex and multifaceted issue. While it may seem like a far-fetched claim, there are some arguments that suggest the media's handling of climate change can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities. To understand this, it's essential to examine the ways in which climate change is framed and presented in the media, and how this framing can affect Christian beliefs and values. One of the primary concerns is that the media's emphasis on climate change can be seen as a form of moralizing, where those who do not adhere to the dominant climate change narrative are viewed as unsympathetic or even sinful. This can be particularly problematic for Christians, who are often called to be good stewards of the earth and to care for the poor and vulnerable. However, when the media presents climate change as a predominantly secular issue, it can create a sense of dissonance among Christians who feel that their faith is being ignored or marginalized. Furthermore, the media's focus on climate change can also be seen as a way of promoting a particular worldview that may be at odds with Christian values. For example, some climate change activists have been known to use language that is overtly apocalyptic, warning of catastrophic consequences if immediate action is not taken to reduce carbon emissions. While this kind of language may be effective in raising awareness about the issue, it can also be alienating for Christians who believe in a more nuanced and hopeful vision of the future. Another issue is that the media's coverage of climate change often prioritizes the voices of secular experts and activists over those of Christian leaders and theologians. This can create a sense of exclusion and disenfranchisement among Christians who feel that their perspectives and concerns are being ignored or dismissed. For instance, when Pope Francis released his encyclical on climate change, Laudato Si, it was largely ignored by the mainstream media, despite being a significant contribution to the global conversation on the issue. In addition, the media's emphasis on climate change can also be seen as a way of promoting a particular form of environmentalism that may not be compatible with Christian teachings. For example, some environmentalists have been known to advocate for population control and reduced consumption, which can be at odds with Christian values of hospitality, generosity, and stewardship. While Christians are called to care for the earth and to use resources wisely, they are also called to prioritize the well-being and dignity of all human beings, particularly the poor and vulnerable. It's also worth noting that the media's coverage of climate change can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities in the global south. For example, in some African countries, climate change is often framed as a Western issue, and African Christians may feel that their concerns and perspectives are being ignored or marginalized. This can create a sense of resentment and mistrust among African Christians, who may feel that the media's focus on climate change is a form of cultural imperialism. In conclusion, while the claim that the mainstream media uses climate change to oppress Christians may seem extreme, there are some valid concerns that need to be addressed. The media's handling of climate change can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities, particularly in terms of moralizing, worldview, and exclusion. To promote a more nuanced and inclusive conversation on climate change, the media needs to prioritize the voices and perspectives of Christian leaders and theologians, and to recognize the complexities and diversity of Christian thought on the issue. By doing so, we can work towards a more just and equitable solution to the climate crisis, one that takes into account the needs and concerns of all people, regardless of their faith or background.